Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Desiree Dembski-Hamlin, and I'm Deputy Director at the Freedoms Way National Heritage Area. On behalf of the organization, I'd like to welcome you to Creating Accessible Experiences for Visitors of All Abilities. And this is the final webinar in the three-part series, Heritage in Action, Engaging the Next Generation Through Educational Programs and Activities. Offered by the Freedoms Way National Heritage Area, this series is designed to support cultural, environmental, and history organizations in developing and sustaining education programs for school audiences. A recommendation developed through a comprehensive assessment of the educational opportunities available to students within the 45 communities of the Heritage Area, which was conducted for Freedoms Way by Elizabeth Nevins of Seed Education Consulting. Freedoms Way collaborates with people, organizations, and the communities of the Heritage Area to facilitate and promote conservation, preservation, and educational initiatives. Our efforts inspire residents and visitors to value and engage with our landscapes, histories, and cultures, and the principles underlying freedom and democracy. These webinars explore strategies to engage youth, a population that is critically important to the well-being and long-term stewardship of the heritage area and its natural, cultural, and historical resources. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with registrants following each session. Additional educational resources and templates will be available on the Freedoms Way website for all to access. Each session has been and is closed captioned. Please place your questions in the chat as they arise throughout the webinar, and they'll be answered as appropriate. We'd like to offer a hearty thanks to the advisory committee whose expertise and experience guided this project. We are deeply grateful for their support. This includes Julie Burnson, Director of Learning at the Trustees, Carolyn Collins, Education Program Manager of Historic New England, Denise LeBlanc, Vice President and Program Chair of the Friends of Pinehawk, Catherine Parent, Program Coordinator at the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation's Division of Water Supply Protection, and Hannah Wolf, Education Coordinator at LexArt. And our consultant managing this project is Elizabeth Nevins, the principal of Seed Ed Consulting. I'll now turn it over to Elizabeth and our speakers today, Charles G. Baldwin, Program Officer 3 of Access and Inclusion with the Mass Cultural Council, and Brenda Muniapan, Senior Director of the Museum Experience with the Discovery Museum. Elizabeth?
Thank you so much, Desiree. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to be here for our third visit together for our third and last session. And we're going to be talking today about accessibility in all the ways that term can be applied and making our organizations welcoming to people of all abilities. And we're really lucky today to have Charles Baldwin, who works with the Access and Inclusion programs at Mass Cultural Council. He's kind of like an expert. He knows a lot, and he's going to share a lot of great information with you all. And actually, Charles was introduced to me through Brenda Muniapin. Brenda, I've known Brenda for a while now. Brenda is working at the Discovery Museum. We met when she was at the MIT Museum, but she is the Senior Director of Museum Experience. And the Discovery Museum has a very extensive access programming at their site, and again, in all the ways that we think about access, whether it's intellectual, physical, and so we're really lucky she's going to be sharing with us some of the ways in which the kind of concepts and ideas that Charles is going to share with us really work in practice in a museum setting. So I am going to turn it over to you, Charles. And folks, if you can be putting your questions into the webinar chat. I'm going to be kind of managing the questions, but I think we're going to have Charles kind of go through his kind of 101 slides with you all. And then at the end, I'll be throwing some questions at him, and then Brenda will be talking. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. And I will let Charles take over. Thank you.
And thank you very much, and delighted to be here. I do have a slideshow. The slideshow itself is going to address some of the laws, a bunch of data, and the data I'm going to go through fairly quickly so that we can get right down into the different modifications and accommodations that you might provide. the main thing that I always like to fight in this concept is fight the fear. I am not the ADA police. I'm an ADA enthusiast. And really, when you're thinking about equity as a directive, access is itself the act of inclusion. Um, uh, the slideshow that I go through quickly, if you want me to pause, please have me pause. But we're going to jump right in. All right. All right. Everyone can see this on the screen. Great. Access 101. This slide features a picture from the ADA protests prior to the ADA, actually, but the protests back in 1990. If you have the opportunity to check out the work of Tom Olin, marvelous pictures throughout all of that. Mass Cultural Council, if you're unaware, is an independent state agency that actually provides grants and funding for individual artists, for organizations, through your local cultural councils, as well as facilities. And as noted within this, equity is the directive. Our goal when thinking about access and obligations under the ADA is continual improvement. We're not looking for you to be perfect. We're looking for your understanding and for your, again, continued improvement. So, back in 2023, our grants asked the question, is your site or event accessible? And that was it. Starting in 2025, we started asking, how is your site or event accessible to people who are deaf or have a disability? So I'm going to ask that question again at the end, but I just wanted you to sit with that for a little while when I go through some of this information. So briefly, the ADA defines disability as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity, which could be climbing stairs, going grocery shopping, caring for yourself. But the ADA also defines disability as a record of that impairment, perhaps a disease or a trauma that you had may still be affecting how you are perceived, but also as regarded as having an impairment. So in the context of a friend of mine who has cerebral palsy, it's a physical functional limitation, but sometimes the words cerebral or cerebral get people thinking that she may have cognitive or brain-based disabilities as well. This is the data that I'm going to go through fairly quickly. The American Census identifies 1 in 5 people in the US as having a disability. Now, the census is, of course, self-identified. And many people with functional limitations may not identify as a person with a disability. But a part of this numbers is the aging baby boomer population, which I like to refer to as the silver tsunami, because I'm part of it. But also we're seeing a rise in cognitive and developmental disabilities in our youth. And this is the baby boomers generation aging, with 10,000 people turning 65 every day until the year 2050. So although, oh, and then lastly, of course, accidents, trauma, accidents also contribute to functional limitations within our bodies. And all of this information is really to get us thinking of that access, while it is often code for the inclusion of people with disabilities, it's greater than identifying with your ability. Because if you think of a family with a child all the way to great grandma, within that spectrum, there are a variety of abilities. And that's what we want you to anticipate. So we think of access as both iterative, but also responsive. So there are a couple of phrases in the ADA that are, well, I'll just say vague. I'm not a legal person. As I mentioned before, I'm an enthusiast. One of the goals of the ADA is integrated settings. So not special programs for special people, but the opportunity for us all to get together. Separate programs are permitted when necessary, but again, the goal is integrated settings. And within that, reasonable accommodations. So it is expected within the law that if modifications, quote unquote, are reasonable, a term that can be decided based on the human and financial capacity of your organization, and it's very nuanced because it's going to vary from organization to organization. But what is considered reasonable is expected to be done. And that's not just for patrons, it's also for your employees, your volunteers, any students that you might have, or artists that you are working with. And these accommodations certainly exist in the facilities, but they get you thinking about the different auxiliary aids, the information systems that you provide, including your website. And also, this is my own addition, really the idea of health promotion, the no harm sort of quality that we're always looking for. Here I've listed some things that you may have that you don't even think about as accommodations because you have them every day. We've got parking spaces, we have an elevator, we have a door. But it's a reminder that everything from lighting and acoustics to emergency signals that are visible and audible, power stations so that people can control and power up the tools that they may need. These are all very reasonable and things that you can highlight that you're already doing. Yes, some accommodations are not things that you do all the time, but many are. So some auxiliary aids that I think are worth noting. Again, sometimes people get very wrapped up in fear. They're thinking about Braille, which is great. They're thinking about American Sign Language, which is great. But sometimes we want you to start with the simple things and build your way up. Again, access as determined by the human and financial capacity of your organization. So think about large print documents. I love them. If I can read a document without my readers, fantastic. Transcripts, providing a pencil and paper. So even that is considered an auxiliary aid if there's a language barrier because someone is deaf and is an ASL user. Captioning is very big, of course. We've got captions in this webinar right now. Can you provide them in a poetry reading or a keynote speaker? Again, another way to provide access that is not difficult. One note that I'm going to put in here, materials in Braille. We do know with the rise of audio equipment that young people aren't using Braille as maybe as much as we would like. Braille is reading, and reading is good for your brain. So I'm a big promoter of Braille. But again, it's not a place you have to start. Think about the relationships that you have, who's coming in and who you want to come in. Information systems. Now, I've included an image here that is really an optical illusion, but I think sometimes our information systems can be perceived that way. We all talk about intuitive, but it's harder to achieve sometimes in a digital environment. But think about the information that you provide in text, what you could provide in audio, and what you might provide visually. Don't forget emergencies. Again, you've got a variety of people in the space. How do you get them out? Where do you gather them? Sometimes even wayfinding and mapping can be key. You might have acreage. How do you help people know where they are and where they want to go? That too can be an access issue for a variety of people. So often when I talk about these different accommodations and these different things to be thinking about, I like to remind people, I'm not a doctor. I'm not diagnosing people, but I am thinking about the environments that we create as producers and nonprofit cultural folk and making sure that the environments that we are creating are not disabling. Last two things on this, know before you go. hugely popular. What's going to get me off the couch? How do I fight the anxiety about where am I going to park? And is there going to be food? And et cetera, et cetera. And then social stories, which really I should be calling social narratives. A social story is a copywritten form, but this is a version of a more detailed know before you go that includes both word and image, uh, again, for a variety of reasons to help people fight any anxiety about where they're going and what they're going to experience when they're there. Uh, in health promotion, I like to always remind people that safety and health promotion can sometimes be a way into access when access might not be landing the way you want it to with your board or your leadership. Safety often does. Thinking about safety and security is an access issue. Providing areas of refuge or respite, having nursing rooms, making sure that you've got changing tables in the restrooms, and really thinking about acoustics and lighting from a health background and not just, can I see the text that I'm trying to read? Also, within the ADA, besides integrated settings and reasonable accommodations and all the many things that I just shared, is the phrase effective communication. Again, vague enough but powerful enough that really gives you agency on what you're going to determine is effective. So we think about communication in text, audio, and visual. Here I provided a number of logos that people may be familiar with or not, but if you are, and I'm scrolling through and I see a logo that is relevant to me and the needs that I might have, those logos are going to say a lot more than if I'm trying to scroll through a lot of text about what you might be offering. Within the ADA, there are, like with parking, there's actually, if you provide a place with reserved seating and amplified sound itself is already a way to help people who may have limited hearing or hearing loss. But I'd like to think about ASL briefly, particularly because in the council, we ask, how are you making your event or site accessible to people who are deaf or have a disability? And a reminder that deafness as a condition is along a spectrum. Capital D deaf is referring to people who are culturally deaf and American Sign Language is their primary, maybe not only, but their primary language. And when you bring in an interpreter, that interpreter, again, is interpreting from one language, verbal English, to another, kinesthetic manual language. So it's not as easy to say, oh, we'll provide the interpreter and people will come. Really think about it as a language and then deal with the relationship building first before the accommodation. Two things I just want to note on this. As I mentioned, there is a formula for how many assistive listening devices you are to have in a place of assembly that requires amplified sound. And then briefly, and this is a huge topic, and I'm going to touch on it again, web access. Your website is your front door now. And if I can't get through the front door because I'm a screen reader user, I'm not going to go. So knowing if your web designer understands what digital access means is like being able to ask your contractor the right questions so that you know that he or she or they understand what inclusive design means in amongst all those building codes. So within the ADA, there are also some specifics around mobility devices, service animals, parking, which I'm really not going to spend too much time on, and grievances. So mobility devices, which are often wheelchairs, but are other devices as well, have the right, individuals who use them have the right to go where any other public persons are able to go. So whether that's something that you lean on, whether, as you'll see, the third image is a Segway, these other power-driven mobility devices are allowed on your site. And like anything, they have to be in control of the owner. If anyone is out of control, you can ask them to leave. And the same for service animals. You can say somewhere on your website or at the front door, service animals are welcome, which is a good thing because the service animal is illegally allowed to go with the person wherever the public is there. The service animals do not require certificates, outfits, or vests, but I will tell you, friends of mine often will put their service dog into a vest to avoid the complicated questions of that you're not supposed to ask. It's one way to secure that, but it's not required. Officially, there are only two questions to ask, which if you've gotten to the point that you're having to ask, it could be a tense moment. Is the animal a service animal? What is the task the animal has been trained to perform? I would rather suggest that you develop a policy for emotional support animals and make sure that that is on your website. Service animals, of course, are allowed. Emotional support animals, you need to decide what you're going to do. Parking, which again, I'm not going to go into too much, but it has all sorts of requirements about space, as close to the front door as possible, enough room so I can get out, and the grievance procedure. The grievance procedure, which sounds like, oh, might open us up to litigation, is really about we're looking for a response for problems that may occur. You want something that is going to contact a real person so that you can work out whatever problem it is. And this is where you get into, it's great to have a designated 504 coordinator, and that way they can respond to whatever that issue is. One of the best things to have in response to an issue is the access plan, which I'll touch on briefly, but also a well-trained staff, making sure that they understand your mission and vision of inclusion and how that forms the provisions that you might be offering so that a variety of people can join in your cultural activity and at your site. So inclusive design or universal design is the design of the environment to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without adaptation or modification. And this is where I say, those of us who are producing, if we think of inclusion at the start and by design, it's a lot easier to erase pencil than it is to erase 2 front steps to your new front door. So the idea is to be thinking about this from the start. I'm going to touch briefly upon considerations of inclusive design, thinking about body fit, comfort, awareness. Can I find the information easily? Does it make sense to me? Can I understand how the faucet works or how the door latch works? And we want to also be continually promoting health and safety. We don't want to harm people with our trying to be more accessible and adapting to that. Like if the person who's blind comes into your space and 10 people ask them, oh, did you know we have a tactile exhibit? You might want to check that because I just want to come in to your tactile exhibit and not be asked 10 times if I'm aware of it. So again, this is where we get back into the staff. But think about these personalizations, these iterative things that you can anticipate, understanding that our humanity comes in such a variety of styles. It's more than a ramp. So there are obviously both apparent and non-apparent disabilities within our bodies. So you can't make assumptions. And I like this. This is another photo by Tom Olin from the 1990 protests with a reminder that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I'm not going to go into that. We have a lot of things we're all dealing with right now, but it's a reminder of the importance of creating access for people who might be considered on the edges is going to create access for everyone in the center. So, question, how is your site or event accessible to people who are deaf or have a disability? There's a lot of things I just dumped on you because we only have an hour, but let that sit for a bit while Brenda is doing her presentation, because there are things that you are probably already doing that are relevant. And what you want to do is think about how you can improve. And the council has been investing in the tools to help you. So Open Door Arts, with an investment from the Mass Cultural Council, has developed an Arts Access Hub, which is a centralized spot for information and resources. We're going to put that link in the chat, but it's something that you really want to hold on to. It's a great resource. Excuse me. I've listed a number of resources here, which I will also share so that you can get them on off the website and in a follow-up email. And I'll include my email as well. Excuse me.
Thank you, Charles. Take a drink. You deserved it.
Yeah, that's a lot. I know. How to write down the ADA in 20 minutes.
Well, yeah, thank you. I know it's a lot. And, I think we had a conversation ahead of time when we were planning this session where, we didn't want to scare people because I do think people do feel, and I think, you're pointing out the kind of convenient, useful kind of vagueness of some of these terms in the ADA that allow organizations to kind of do what they are able. And I think that's what's most important is, the most important step is recognizing that this is something to do and to be thinking about it. And recognizing where you are doing things, and as you're planning new things, keeping these considerations in mind. Yeah.
Don't let the perfection prevent you from taking the first step. And what I always say, the only thing that's implied by the first step is the second step. So it's really, recognize what you have, promote it, let people know what you have, what you're doing. But think about whether it's responding to customer surveys or taking a look at what the Access Hub offers. One of those is a self-assessment tool, and really think about where are the points of improvement that I could do right away, or maybe it's 5 years down the pike. But that idea of always planning and anticipating human variety.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, I know we talked about how I have access anxiety myself, and I don't identify as a person with a disability, but for me to try something new, to be able to go to a website and understand when are you open, how do you work, and so that I feel comfortable or prepared enough. And I know that for a lot of people, that's it's about information and communicating information. I feel in many ways.
I do feel like before, like in the early 2008s, 2010, fear of litigation was what often drove people into access, which is a shame. I much prefer our current sort of directive, which is really thinking about fairness and equity, and our society is an ecosystem, and it actually works better with the diversity. That's what we want. Those perspectives, those opportunities to really bring us all together, not just a select group. And as I always like to remind people, if you're not inclusive, then you're exclusive. And that's not where we want to land.
And I think your point also that like when we start thinking about making our sites inclusive to all the humanity and all its splendor, you're making people in the center feel more welcome as well. Like you're not, being more inclusive doesn't imply being exclusive to others. You're just opening the door more broadly. And so I think
Open the door. And
yeah.
I think this will be a good lead in for Brenda, but that's why I always like focus on a family. You can get lost sometimes in like, oh, the person in the wheelchair who's going to, think about that huge spectrum of ability. And yeah, nobody likes stairs. A kid at the top of the stairs is a frightening thing. Grandma at the top of the stairs is a frightening thing. So, but think again about just that variety and spectrum of ability, whether it's diagnosed or not. I'm not a doctor, but I do want to create environments where everyone feels welcome. And if I can provide and sort of promote a number of provisions, that gives the consumer, the patron, the choice. And that's what I'm also trying to do is provide choices. I'm not telling you what you have to do, but if I can provide a menu of choices, then I'm going to get people who want to participate with those provisions.
Great. Well, thank you. And Brenda, I would love if you could kind of jump in here and talk a little bit about what this looks like in practice. I know Discovery Museum has, I had spent a lot of time with you all last year. I worked on your strategic plan and had the opportunity actually to speak with a lot of members of your community through that process and was really just struck by kind of the feeling um, really strong belonging that many of your members and patrons have because you've worked so hard to create a really welcoming space. And so, love if you could share a little bit about
Thank
what you all
you.
are doing.
Yes, absolutely. Let's go here. All right. Hello, everyone. I am Brenda Muniappan. I'm the Senior Director of the Museum Experience at Discovery Museum. We have a long connection to MCC and what has been known as MCC Up, the Universal Participation Program Initiative at MCC. And I'll tell you a little bit about our history in terms of access and inclusion. And first, I'll tell you a bit about our museum. So Discovery Museum is located in Acton, Massachusetts. We are on the traditional lands of the Nipmuc, Massachusetts, Pawtucket, and Agawam tribes. We are a science-focused children's museum, and our emphasis, maybe motto, is science, nature, and play. We have about 75 staff, full-time and part-time. We have about 16,000 square feet of exhibit space, and our campus is 4.5 acres. Science, nature, play, and this photo here of our wheelchair accessible treehouse should probably indicate to you that we encourage people to spend time not only inside our museum building, but also outside in our, I think, pretty unique and fairly thoughtfully designed outdoor play spaces. Our campus is universally designed. So Charles just talked about inclusive design. In 2017, this wheelchair accessible treehouse and Discovery Woods, the area that it is located in, was designed with accessibility experts with the idea of inclusion in mind. And so we were very fortunate to have the Treehouse guys come and build this for us. And it has been a wonder ever since. The year after that, in 2018, we revised the campus and combined two buildings that had been our primary exhibits areas into one, again, universally designed ADA accessible museum building. And that was very intentional. Again, some of you, if you've ever been to Discovery Museum back when it was Discovery Museums, you probably visited the lovely little Victorian house that was super adorable and absolutely not accessible to anybody who needed a walker or wheels or stroller or anything like that. So we have a much improved campus right now. Each year we see over 200,000 visitors to our campus. Our outreach work gets us to many more people. And then, yeah, we have been doing access work as defined for access and inclusion for over 15 years. And I'd like to get into that a little bit now. So back in 2010, maybe it was 29, there was great interest from our leadership in broadening our community and building partnerships and being more welcoming. And so we launched an initiative called Open Door Connections, and we wanted to enable more people to have access to this wonderful children's museum and our campus. Connected to what Charles said, we didn't necessarily know everything that would happen, and we didn't necessarily have the funds either to to first launch us into accessibility, access for all. But our CEO was very determined to enable open access and was very confident that funding would follow. He wasn't wrong, and hence our success over these past 15 years. So now, each year, we have about 30% of our visitors engage with us for free or almost free at our campus. We have, during the school year, every first Friday night, we're open late and we're open for free. Every summer Friday night, we're open late and for free. People can come to our campus and get in for $1 if they've got a WIC or EBT or Connect or Care card. We subsidize field trips to our campus. We subsidize our outreach traveling science workshops, which go to every New England state and are extremely popular. Military folks, educators, library patrons can get in for free or for a very deep discount, and many other folks can as well. We have been an MCC UP designated organization for a number of years. We are also an autism welcoming organization, thanks to collaboration and learning with the Autism Alliance. So in 2010, Discovery Museum launched an initiative called Especially for Me. These are sensory-friendly events designed for audiences that could benefit from, would like, limited capacity, sort of not big crowds, lots of noise all the time, and potentially other people who have similar experiences, other families with children or adults who have similar experiences. And so since 2010, Especially for Me events have been completely free. Families, children and their caregivers who would like to attend only need to pre-register so we know what our numbers are, attendance numbers, and can provide for everyone who'd like to come. We limit capacity. We have these in evenings and in afternoons. Some of them are for anyone who'd like to have an inclusive open access event. Some are focused on families who have a member who is on the autism spectrum. Some of our events are for folks who have a family member who's deaf or blind or deafblind. And so I think we have now worked up to about 26 events that we have every year. Both in the evenings, when they're evening, we are closed to the public. We'll have a facilitated program either done by our staff or by a guest presenter. And we provide, because it is evening, we will provide a free dinner. Every month on Tuesday afternoons, we have sensory-friendly afternoons where, again, capacity is limited and folks can enjoy the museum with any member of the public who is here. So some families like to have the exclusive events where they can sort of get to know other families who have similar experiences. They can chat with, talk about resources, engage together. And then others, it might be more like a sort of a stepping stool, a stage-wise progression, where once they are comfortable with Discovery Museum after coming to the closed events, they then choose to come at other times. And that's also why we offer free family memberships to Discovery Museum to the families, the caregivers and the children who come for our Especially for Me events, to help them gain familiarity with us and to come as much as they want to enjoy and play together. At all of our Especially for Me events, when we have programming, we always have professional ASL interpretation to provide for anyone who might need it. We're a children's museum, and I will say that over the years, as we've been learning ASL and getting to know the professional ASL interpreters, we've also recognized how useful ASL is, not just for people who are deaf or deaf-blind, but also for babies and families. I definitely use baby ASL when my children were little, and it is perfectly valid in this day and age with other people's children. So we have a number of, over the years, we've developed a number of assets, some features that help us improve the sensory-friendly experience here at Discovery Museum. We do have a social story. You can find it on our website. Elizabeth might be able to drop a link to it for you. That social story has been translated into 8 different languages because we have a diverse audience, because we know not only do people with disabilities, might they appreciate that, but also people who don't speak English or read English. So it is picture rich. We have a sensory map for our campus to help people know where some spaces might be noisier in general, where some spaces may be quieter should they need it. Free for anyone who needs it to borrow. We have noise canceling headphones. Some of our spaces are noisy. We have sunglasses. We have our outdoor spaces that we encourage everybody to use. And on sunny days, some people appreciate the sunglasses. We have a portable step stool for anyone who might need that to get to certain spaces where our existing step stools might not be sufficient. And we have wheelchairs that folks can borrow when they come should they need it. We don't have, as some places that are fortunate to have more available space than we do, we don't have a dedicated space that is a quiet zone, but we are able to create a pop-up take a break space, and we'll take over part of an exhibit area that tends to be less used in during especially for me events, and add weighted blankets and timers and fidget toys and sort of make that area an opportunity for families who come for our especially for me events to have a respite area if should they need it. And then we try to have these elements around all the time because everybody enjoys a great sensory experience, and we are a children's museum and very much know that people of all ages learn in different ways. But we are, so sometimes some things we've tested, and especially for me, programs have made it onto our exhibit floor as permanent experiences, like jingle balls in our balls and ramps area. It's, hearing a ball jingle as it rolls down a ramp is great fun for everyone. Being able to use a tactile harmonogram is great for everyone, not just someone who is vision impaired. So that's also a tip for trying some things out and recognizing how useful it is to everyone, not just a specific audience. So when we have our especially for me's, and actually year round, I think we all know that not everyone has a visible disability, and back to the goal of being welcoming and inclusive for all, we have all staff trainings throughout the year for everyone to sort of learn from experts, for example, from the Autism Alliance, from Boston Children's Hospital's Deaf and Hard of Hearing program. We have experts talk with us about best practices for engaging with any particular adult that they know, particular child or adult who they are experts on. And we take those to heart. We talk about them throughout the year, about ways we can better engage with folks, say, who are on the autism spectrum, or how we might better support caregivers who are here with an autistic child. For example, we practice our ASL. We have accessibility notes sent out to the staff who have signed up to work the especially for me evenings. And on those especially for me evenings, we do day of check-ins right before we have our event. So everybody is psyched and excited and ready to work together and ready to welcome our visitors. I added in a quote from one of our especially for me attendees who wrote to us, "Our oldest child has autism and can get easily overwhelmed. He was in his element today. The staff was so helpful and were not overwhelming to him. They seamlessly walked that fine line." And I will say our staff have gotten kudos all over the place because they take their trainings to heart and they implement it every day they're here at the museum. So in the past few years, we have expanded the types of, especially for me, events we do. We have focused on our outdoor campus a bit more. Those evening events were tended to be focused on the inside with dinners inside and performances inside. And now we try to encourage our, especially for me, audiences to spend time outdoors. We all know that being outdoors is beneficial to our health, and we want to encourage people who are maybe a little more cautious about spending time outdoors to sort of ease into it through our specifically designed campus which was designed to encourage people to spend time outside. So we have staff facilitated activities like the picture here, which is our educator Kelly doing a balls and ramps program. We'll have guests who will come in to do performances. We have a magician who is deaf who does a terrific show for folks. We have outdoor yoga on occasion, which is also great fun, and many other things to entice people to spend time with us outside. And then more recently, we began offering, especially for me, events for people on the autism spectrum who are over the age of 18. So these, especially for me, events are for autistic adults and their caregivers. And the pilot was co-designed with Allison Daigle, who leads the Autism Alliance. Allison is actually the parent of an adult with autism. And, it was incredible to see adults having fun in our museum with the exhibits that, again, we believe are great fun for everyone. But also to learn that, caregivers of adults with autism can use more social engagement when their children age out of the school system. Many of the supports they had been using and relied on go away. So creating opportunities for them is really, it helps to fill a little bit of a need. And so I encourage everyone on this call to sort of think of that. That was something we didn't know a lot about, but in conversation with a really good partner of ours, we learned what we could and then did a little bit more. So really to follow on what Charles has said, don't be afraid to get started. You don't have to know everything. We certainly did not. You don't have to have all the money you think you need. We did not. You do need to talk with your target audience. It's never without them, about them. Totally rephrase that in the wrong way, but you know what I mean. Definitely talk with your target audience about what they need. Consider whether you have the ability to meet any of those needs and give it a try. You can connect with professional and community partners. I mentioned Boston Children's Hospital and Autism Alliance. We also connect our good partners with the Learning Center for the Deaf and the Perkins School for the Blind. Open Door Theater is near to us, and they do terrific performances and often come and do previews of their performances with our Especially for Me audiences. We have wonderful community partners like the Desi Moms Network, the Hanscom Air Force Base Exceptional Family Member Program, and Somali Parents Advocacy Center for Education, who help us connect with their communities once they, determine whether what we have to offer is something that their communities need. And so, the work is for sure being able to reach out to folks who may not know about you and ask if they'd like to learn more, ask if they're interested in what you already have to offer. So no barriers to getting started, I think. And once you do, definitely keep going. I'll leave you with a couple of quotes here, again, from real people who visited the museum for one or more Especially for Me events. Our daughter is deaf, and she often feels like she is the only deaf person. We call her our unicorn in the field of horses. So these experiences are good for her to be a unicorn in a field of unicorns, that she isn't alone and that she is normal. And from another parent, my older daughter, 11, has autism and Down syndrome, and at an earlier visit to the museum, disappeared, only to be found in the 0 to 3 space, that's the 0 to 3-year-old space, putting the baby dolls to bed. She talked about that room for weeks. So we know what we're doing is great. We've been able to do it for 15 years. We've been able to do it with the support of MCC and others. And so I encourage you all to get started and keep going.
Thank you,
This
Brenda.
is Charles, and briefly, I just want to say, Brenda, uh, there was no reaction button in the tool bar at the bottom because I would have been sending lots of, tooting horns and fanfare.
Thank you.
Great stuff you guys are doing. Great.
Thank you so much.
Brenda, would you like have any sense of like, I mean, I guess it started with kind of financial accessibility in some ways in terms of just making your programming
Yeah.
free. Where like after that was it, I mean, I know there was probably, through strategic planning, thinking about like the buildings changing and doing the outdoor campus and making sure that accessibility was, part of that process.
Yeah.
But in terms of like programming, do you have any sense of where you decided to start and what was like the logical place for you to kind of jump in?
So that's a good question. I will, fully admit I've been at the museum for 6 years, and all of this great work was started by other people. So, Neil Gordon was our CEO in 2009, and the whole idea of increasing access initiated with him. And so, the ability to remove financial barriers is one that could happen from leadership's view, right? Of like what our operating plan look like and how we might go forward. And my colleagues in development and our chief development officer became our CEO. So many of you may know Marie Beam. She's our CEO now. When she was our lead development officer, she would say, all she had to do was tell the story, and people wanted to support us. So I think that open door connections, the access for all, is something organizations want to support. Like it is meaningful to many, and I'm sure Marie has minimized it over the years. There might have been a bit more to it, but I think it is a great story that Neil understood, Marie understands, all of our staff do, and so accessibility from whether financial or whether physical or other. All other accessibility, I will say, as a children's museum, I think, that has been at the forefront. We design for children, but we know it is, well, no child comes to our museum without an adult. So we design for children and their caregivers. And so what we have on campus is really great for everyone. So physical, mental, in all the ways. So that I may not have directly answered your question, but I think we knew this was really important to do, and we needed to get started on it.
That's great. Yeah, and I think, if I could identify a theme that's kind of spread throughout all three of our sessions, it's been the idea of partnerships and I think just generally, we want to create museums and our conservation lands and all these places as places to be curious for our visitors to come and be curious and learn. And we also have to embrace that concept of curiosity and learning in taking on this work of trying new things. And so I think, for our school program session, we talked a lot about go figure out who's working in the schools, make friends, and talk to a lot of people. And I think within this space of accessibility, looking at your community that surrounds you and like who's here, who's not coming, who do we wish would come, and that could be a recent migrant community who may have language accessibility issues, but there's some community leader or organization that you can tap into and say, how can we welcome you to our space? Or talking to maybe an access coordinator within the school system who kind of understands that community within your town and how you might be able to kind of bring them in. Who are the groups? And so I think bringing this sense of adventure and curiosity and openness to relationship building is really where we're gonna practice what we preach, or put into our own practice what we hope people will come to our own spaces and do.
This is Kelvin. I want to comment on something that I know that I always state and that Brenda mentioned, which is this isn't all done overnight. This is rooted in your mission, in your vision, and some steps are fast and some steps are slow. Some things you can do right away, but it's all about planning and really thinking about how do you enact this mission that you might have, that all people belong here, and to not let that stop you. I think a perfect example, and I would imagine when you have some info, your relationship with folks who are deaf didn't just happen because you put an interpreter in your class.
No.
It took time and relationship building, because you want to make sure, or at least people want to make sure they can trust what you're doing and that there won't be harm done to the kid
Yeah.
who's done
Yep.
the wrong thing.
Yeah, so right, that's exactly right. So, I mentioned the Somali Parents Advocacy and Education Group, right? Like we don't have the direct connection to Somali parents, but we, met with Asha and, she got to know us and she reached out to her community and was like, let's come check it out. Same for Desi Moms. We connected with Jaya, who, maybe on her own loved the Discovery Museum, and then decided, right, I want to share this with other, Asian American mothers. And so we connected with various schools for deaf children to invite them to us. We actually do, I didn't talk about this, but we have 1 or 2 Monday mornings. On Mondays during the school year, we're closed, and we'll open just for the schools to come, because they of course are in session, and so they can't come on evenings as easily or together as a group. So we will have days just for them, and have tried to reach out to more schools who support deaf children so that they can come together and play together and enjoy together. But absolutely right. It is very much about us making the effort to reach out. It doesn't always pan out, but we've got to put that effort in. It cannot be only, I think we've recognized we're not a place just for people who know about us.
Right.
Great. Yeah. So I think Desiree is going to come in. I thank you so much. Charles, I don't know if you want to talk about your office hours really quick and what those are. So the link is in the.
As a resource, and I pop those in. We do monthly office hours. A lot of the fall is going to be focused on how people can access the Access Hub, but then based on the zeitgeist of the moments, we'll have topical monthly hours around. It's always under the umbrella of Access, but it really just, again, it's the zeitgeist of the moment, and that's why I wanted to put the link in there. It's tax dollars at work.
Great. And these are all things that we'll be sharing as well through Desiree and Patrice and the folks at Freedom's Way, so that all of this stuff lives in one place for you to come back to.
Fantastic. Well, Charles, Brenda, and Elizabeth, thank you all so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. And thanks to those in the audience for joining us today. Before we go, I'd like to make you aware of Freedom's Way's 2026 Partnership Grant Program, which is launching October 1st. It does include a funding category that supports educational programs and projects and may be a good fit for some of your organizations. Unfortunately, these grants are limited to organizations serving communities within the 45 towns and cities of the Freedom's Way National Heritage Area. The guidelines and additional information is currently live on our website at freedomsway.org/grants. And we encourage you to reach out to us at any time with questions or your ideas via email is best at grants@freedomsway.org. And with that, this concludes today's program. We wish you well and hope to see you all again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.